Vincent van Gogh once said, "I sometimes think there is nothing as delightful as drawing." Delightful, for sure, but fashion illustration is more than just fun. It also plays an incredibly important role in the evolution of fashion. Ever since clothing has been in existence, there was a need to translate ideas into a garment. Fashion illustration has and will always be the first step in bringing your design idea to fruition. Fashion illustration is a piece of art, and like any art, it should be unique and should have the power to speak 1,000 words. Hi guys, how are you all doing today? Are you ready for a fun lesson? I hope you enjoy this lesson and feel inspired afterwards. This is going to be a fun and practical lesson like all of our drawing and illustration lessons. But to be able to play around with different drawing techniques, we will need a few things. A sketchbook, pencil and pencil sharpener, eraser, pens, colored pencils, and markers. Our goal at the end of this lesson is for you to understand the importance of fashion illustration in the fashion industry and how to draw the fashion figure using the 9 heads measuring system. We will take what we have learned and manipulate it to create different poses. We will also explain how to accurately express your ideas in visual form and explore different drawing and illustration styles. Welcome to lesson 4, titled Technical About Drawing. I hope you have your sketchbook, a pen or pencil close by. If not, now is the time to grab it because this lesson is all about fashion illustration. First on our to-do list for this lesson is to look at what fashion illustration is. What is fashion illustration? Fashion illustration is the art of drawing, sketching, or painting fashion concepts and design ideas. These are used to visualize a garment before it's produced. Unlike fashion photography, which is a realistic reproduction of an outfit, fashion illustration is a more stylistic form of fashion communication. These fashion illustrations come in a variety of mediums. One can use traditional mediums like ink, markers, pencils, and paint, or you can draw these illustrations digitally using creative software like Photoshop, Illustration, and many more. Be able to draw an illustration at least well enough to get your point across to another person. Marilyn knew quite well the importance of fashion illustration and the power it exerts when put to use. For someone else to fully perceive your concept, idea, and message, it is best you illustrate it by sketch rather than word. Let's do a quick exercise. I am going to describe a garment using my words. Please tell me whether or not you can visualize it. It is a black top with a very low V neckline to the waist. Lace applique is used to decorate the edge of the neckline, giving a scalloped effect. To create contrast to the lace, the black leathery fabric is draped and manipulated to create a puff-cut sleeve that stands away from the body. Do you have an image in your mind of what this top looks like? Now, let's look at the image. Is this close to what you imagined? Some people can't, and that is why we need to draw it on a figure. There are millions of designs and ideas that simply cannot be fully comprehended by words, pictures, or even a flat sketch. They are better illustrated. So let's look at the purpose of fashion illustration. Why do we illustrate? First, it makes your design look more professional. It is that simple. A well-drawn fashion figure will highlight the best of your design ideas. It will also make the viewer more curious. A beautifully drawn fashion figure will make the viewer want to take a closer look at the clothes. It gives them the chance to appreciate the design details more. It also affects your design during the design phase. By seeing your design on a figure, you can improve the proportions of design to create a better end product. It also helps the designer put together a fashion collection. It will help organize the designs, and you can also see whether or not there is a golden thread running through the collection. By this, I mean that the theme is consistent and that all the looks look like they belong together and work together harmoniously. A fashion illustration also has the power to improve the appeal of your design. It will help the client grasp the fashion ideas that they might have in mind and gives them the opportunity to suggest changes. Believe it or not, it can also boost your creativity. The human body is such an inspiration and can provide you with an infinite source of ideas. This will help you get a better idea of what is possible when it comes to manufacturing your design. It is not difficult to learn how to draw fashion figures. It is actually quite a fun and rewarding process. Some people are just not that into drawing fashion figures and creating fashion illustrations, and that is fine. In that case, you can always use different croquis templates and have all the benefits of a great fashion figure to dress without the efforts to sketch it from scratch. But don't get discouraged right away, because drawing your own fashion figures is not that difficult, and by learning a couple of tricks, everyone can do it. Sketching from scratch is also an amazing skill to learn, so sharpen your pencils and let's begin. In average human proportions, a figure is 6 to 7 heads tall, whereas a fashion figure is often 8 to 9 heads tall, with most of the additional length being taken up in the legs. This is often used to bring the viewer's attention to the length of a dress and the design details, and it gives the artist more space in which to create folds, movements, or texture within the fabric itself. What exactly does 9 heads mean though? As you can see in the image, the height and width of the head is used as a guide for the dimensions of the rest of the body. You can see how the body is broken up into 9 equal parts from the top of the head to the ankle bone. The feet are excluded because they can vary in height depending on the type of shoe. Fashion figures are measured in head length and widths because it is the simplest way to control body proportions. This way, you can map out your figure size and proportion on any size of paper by drawing your 9 heads first. Drawing your own fashion figure does not have to be challenging. I am going to show you a simple method to create a figure, or, as we have learned, a croquis. This method can be broken down into 3 sections: creating guidelines, drawing the skeleton, and adding shape. Welcome to part 1, creating guidelines. We are going to break it down into a few steps to make it a little bit easier for you. So, step 1. First, draw one head. You can either measure the head and draw in the rest, or roughly measure. For the first time, I suggest actually measuring the head with a ruler and making marks where the others should go. Draw 9 heads that are roughly the same shape and size and label them 1 to 9. Leave some space at the bottom of your page for the feet. Step 2. Draw horizontal lines between each head. Please make sure that these are straight. Step 3. Draw in a broken line at head 1.5, so 1.5, and at 4 1/4, so 4.25. So a quarter of head 5, just like in the image. Step 4. Label anatomy as marked on the image. So your head, shoulder, bust, waist and elbow, hips and wrists, crotch, mid-thigh, knees, calf, and ankles. This is all you need to do for part 1. Easy! Now we move on to part 2, which is drawing the skeleton. Now we are going to create the skeleton of your figure. So, step 1. Draw a vertical line perpendicular to the horizontal guidelines. This will be the center line, often referred to as the balance line of your illustration. Step 2. Draw an oval for the head. Then, draw a horizontal line for the shoulders. This line should be about 2 heads widths wide. Step 3. Draw a horizontal line for the hips too. You will notice the hips and shoulders are the same width. If you want to make your hips a bit smaller, you can, but nothing less than 1.5 head widths, please. Otherwise, your figure will not be in proportion. Step 4. Draw the horizontal line for the waist, roughly 1 head's width. In most cases, our waists are smaller than our hips. Can you see that in the image? Next is step 5. Connect the shoulders, the waist, and the hips. Step 6. Draw in the guidelines for the arms. Now you can already see the figure coming to life. Then we move on to step 7. Draw vertical lines from the waist down. This line can go further than the ankles guideline. Then step 8. Draw in your neck. To do this, you can draw a cylinder like I've done in the image. We are almost done. We are moving on to step 9 now. Connecting the dots. Connect the neck to the shoulders. Then step 10 is all about the legs. Create little ovals of where your knees are on its own guideline and smaller ovals for the ankles. And that is it for part 2, guys. Now comes the fun part. After the skeleton is established, we can add some shape. Take your time and draw lightly so that you can easily erase unwanted pencil marks. Step 1. Draw ovals for the shoulders, biceps, and lower arms. Step 2. Draw ovals for the upper and lower legs. These should overlap a little bit with each other just below the knee guideline. You can also draw little triangle shapes for the feet like I did in the image. Step 3. Add shape to the neck and outline the arm using the ovals as guidelines. Always remember, what you do on one side, you have to repeat on the other side. Step 4. Outline the leg and foot using the ovals as guidelines. Again, repeat on the other side. If you do not feel like repeating, once you have finished one side, you can fold the paper on the balance line and trace the one side to the other side. Step 5. Add neck, bust, and underwear line as illustrated in the image. Also, add the princess line. That is the red line in the image. This will help you when you are designing. And then step 6, the last step is to refine your sketch. This means tracing if you have only done one side and erasing all the unnecessary lines. Well done, guys, you have now created your very own fashion figure. See, if you follow these steps, it is not too difficult. It is important to choose the right pose that will make the design the star of the artwork. We have discussed the different croquis poses in the previous module, but we will learn how to draw these poses too. Once you have the body proportions clear, you can practice sketching different poses. These will bring movement to the clothing. Today, we are going to learn how to draw the fashion figure walking. This is one of the most popular poses that fashion designers use because all kinds of clothing and designs look great on this pose. So now that we know how to create the basic static fashion figure, we can manipulate it to create movement. When creating movement, we have to play a little bit with the following lines: the shoulders, the waist, the hips, and the arms and the legs. As you can see in the image, this illustrator did not stick to the horizontal guidelines, but instead used diagonal lines. So, let's play a little bit too. So to create your walking figure, you first need to create your guidelines. This means measuring out your 9 heads, adding your horizontal lines, and adding the anatomy labels. Then, we move on to the skeleton part, and this is the most essential step in drawing a walking fashion figure. First, draw your balance line. Then, draw in your shoulders and your waistline. For today, these will stay horizontal. Then redraw your hip line. To create a slant, make sure that the left circle or measuring point is a little bit higher than its original position, and the right circle is lower than before. Now when you connect the 2 points, it is not a horizontal line anymore, but a diagonal one instead. Step 3. Just like before, we are going to draw in the knee and ankle circles, but this time focus on one leg at a time. Draw a circle on the balance line on the knee guideline. Also draw the ankle and foot on the balance line, bringing that leg to the front. Then, step 4. For the other leg, place the knee circle next to the other one. You will notice that this leg is behind the other one, so to create this, we need to create a line a little lower than the ankle line for the foot. Connect the points of both legs. Does it look similar to my image? Step 5. Create the arms. Keep your main points like the elbow and wrist on its guidelines dedicated to that part of the body, but create some kind of movement. Connect the dots to create your arms. Once you have done this and you are done with the skeleton part of the body, you can add shape to it, just like in the previous method. Unfortunately, as you can see, this image is asymmetric, which means you cannot trace one side to create the other. The last step is refining the figure. Just like the other sketch, finish by erasing all the unnecessary lines and adding your guidelines, like the underwear line, the waist and the bust line and the princess lines. And there you have it, the walking figure. Did you guys enjoy that? Designers, just to let you know, these 2 templates will be available as bonus content. Of course, we are all different and like to design for different target markets and not just women, so I have created a male and a child figure for you too. Once you have completed your fashion figure, you can get into the most fun part, which is to design your clothes onto the figure. To do so, you need to think about the style, silhouette, and fabric that you are using. Do you remember all the different folds we discussed in Module 1? Compression folds, pipe folds, and hanging folds? Make sure you always keep in mind the fabric and the pattern you are using and how it will drape around the body. This is the process I suggest you follow to create an amazing fashion illustration. These are just guidelines though, so please feel free to do your own thing. First, I would create my basic fashion figure using the methods learned today. I would draw this very lightly with a pencil so that I can erase it easily. My next step will be to draw my design or clothing onto this fashion figure. After I have perfected my design and added all the details like folds, stitch lines, seams, and have created movement, I will go over the clothes with a fine liner. I will also go over the parts of the figure that you will be able to see and erase all the unnecessary lines. Some people don't like the black outline, and that is totally fine. I like it because it allows me to add more detail. I will then start to render the image, making it come to life. This means adding texture, shadows, prints, and color. Now that we know how to draw the basic fashion figure, we can ask the following question. What makes a good fashion illustration? Let's look at the top tips for creating amazing fashion illustrations to better your own sense of design and improve your illustrations. Understanding anatomy. Knowing how to correctly draw a body allows for a variety of freedom when drawing figures, different poses, and clothing. Next, we need to understand perspective. Understanding how objects exist within a space can only help you illustrate them in an accurate way. Why stylization is welcome within your designs, knowing the perspective rules can help you break them in interesting ways. The next step is to stylize to optimize. After having learned the basic figure, you can stylize the figure to bring more focus to a particular element of design. As we have learned, fashion figures often have longer legs and are much taller than the average human. Move with purpose. A static figure is fine to draw, but you will find that it often looks a little bit boring. When you pose a figure dynamically, you can create action for the clothing you are drawing. This will also instantly aid your storytelling with your illustration. Is a figure dancing or walking? Movement can also help the viewer understand what makes up the design. We will discuss the texture and weight of the fabric a little bit later, but the best way to show whether a fabric is light and flowy or stiff and heavy is to show how it moves when placed on the body or when in movement. A good way to understand how various fabrics move is to watch models walk down the runway. In addition to clothing and movement aiding your storytelling, the compositions also play a big role. Is the figure on a white space or in a setting complete with a background? This is where fashion illustration may collide with editorial illustration a bit. Allowing a simple background into your work may help viewers understand the context for when and where your design is worn. Please note that if a background is too busy, it may overwhelm the fashion design itself. The next top tip is to differentiate between fabrics and texture. In my opinion, one of the most fun parts of fashion drawing and illustration is drawing the fabric, which includes its weight and texture. Instantly, the viewer has a better understanding of the garment. Sure, we can see it as a blue dress, but is it made of silk, tulle, chiffon, or a heavier fabric like cotton or denim? The way it is drawn, rendered, and draped around the figure gives the viewer an idea of the sort of textile being depicted. You can show that something is smooth and soft by using longer, curved lines, and something stiff and rough with shorter, more rigid lines. Practice textures within your textiles by drawing swatches of the clothing you are wearing, fabrics close by, or textile examples from magazines. Since we are talking about textiles, remember to add lots of prints. Surface design or prints are often a big deal in fashion. Prints can instantly make a simple design more interesting and even be the focal point within an illustration. Patterns can also tell stories in their own light. Classic patterns like houndstooth and chevrons may showcase current fashion trends or tell the story of clothing from a certain era. Consider the story you want to tell. Do you want to use understated prints like simple dots or stripes, or do you want to use bold prints like florals? Textile prints can also help coordinate various pieces when you match up a color or two from a print within other designs. This is especially apparent when you are designing a collection and begin to notice how various pieces, though not worn together, connect with each other. This connection throughout a range is the golden thread that I so often refer to. It is also important for the viewer to be able to differentiate between textiles and non-textile surfaces. Being able to render various objects so the viewer understands not only communicates the concept of the design and storytelling within a fashion illustration, but also allows the viewer to better connect with what has been drawn. And the last top tip for illustration: styling. Styling your figure, which includes facial features and accessories, should be used to accentuate the design. Few facial features will keep the focus on the design. Let's go through those one more time. Understanding anatomy will help you draw fashion figures in different poses. Understand perspective and how objects interact with one another, or how your figure interacts with the space around it. You can stylize your figure to emphasize design details. Create figures in motion to keep it from looking too stiff. Render your textiles to show the weight and texture so that the viewer understands what sort of fabric is being illustrated. Be bold and add prints to your textiles in order to create more interesting designs or tell a story. Render non-textile surfaces accordingly so that the viewer understands the difference between each surface within your illustration. You can style your figure by adding facial features, hair, and accessories to complete your fashion illustration. And that is it, your top tips for creating a fabulous fashion figure. When designing, there are several aspects to keep in mind. These aspects can be categorized into two areas: the elements and the principles of design. We already have a good understanding of the elements, so in the next lesson, we will take a good look at what the principles of design are. A good way to describe it is that when you are making a cake, the elements are your ingredients and the principles are the directions or the recipe. The principles are used to organize and arrange the elements of design. Join me as we delve into design. When it comes to fashion illustration, each designer has their own unique vision, resulting in a wide range of looks and styles. Generally, fashion illustration styles fall into one of two types: loose rendering and tight rendering. Loose rendering leaves out a lot of detail and is drawn with as few lines as possible. The viewer has to use his or her imagination to fill in the missing details. Tight rendering, on the other hand, is a very detailed illustration. The viewer has a much better idea of what the designer intended. Which one do you prefer? Let's look at some examples of famous fashion illustrators and see if we can determine if it is a loose or tight rendering. Along with the different types of rendering, also try to determine the type of mediums used. If you find a style that you really like, identify exactly what you like about it and why, and try and incorporate it into your own fashion illustrations. Here we go. First, we have Megan, Carolina, and Bill, all with very different styles. Out of all of them, I would say that Bill's fashion illustration is the best example of loose rendering because we kind of have to fill in the missing details ourselves. Which one do you like the most out of the three? Next, we have Megan, Jenny, and Amy. Again, all very different from each other. Out of these, I'd say that the best example of tight rendering is Amy's fashion illustration because it has a lot of detail. Again, please tell me which one of these you like the most. Did you know there are many fashion brands still using fashion illustration to promote new clothing and to stand out from their competitors? Some of these include Tiffany & Co., Coco Chanel, and Dolce & Gabbana. The image is an example of Coco Chanel's fashion figures, drawn by Karl Lagerfeld. So how do you find your own drawing and illustration style? Practice trying out different styles and techniques to find your own personal touch and refine your style. It does take time training and testing different tools, mediums, and techniques to discover what you like and what reflects your vision. You will eventually develop your own signature look. Try these tips to help you put a stamp on your art and help you develop your own signature style. Play with proportions and exaggerations. Also, play with different mediums. Specialize in the type of clothing you like best. Do you like evening wear, sportswear, day wear? What kind of clothes do you like to design? Because we are all beginners in some way, it is easiest to imitate someone else's work when experimenting. Study other illustrators' works and feel free to borrow design elements from them, but please do not copy their style or illustration. Why not copy, you ask? Well, let's be honest, you won't do it as well as they do. You also won't have as much fun as you would creating your own style. Believe it or not, imitating someone else's style is way harder than following your own instincts. Always keep an eye on the latest fashion trends and find inspiration around you. Remember, inspiration can come from anything and everything we see, from still life to real life and everything in between. There are a lot of things that determine your unique illustration style. Do you like using colored pencils, markers, paint, or a combination of all of them? How do you illustrate the faces on your figure? How much styling do you include? What kind of clothes are you designing? All of these little details will work together to create a look that is distinctively yours. Focus on creating sketches that express your unique style with each element. After you find ways of making drawings your own, continue to practice and work on your skills. Be open to experimenting with different styles. Even after you have developed a drawing style, you can continue to improve and change up your work, just like you can change the type of clothing you design. Remember, improving does not mean your illustrations are not good the way they are, but there is always room to develop your technique. Some designers have great ideas but have trouble transferring them to paper. As a fashion illustrator, you can make a living from drawing out designs on paper to satisfy a client's need of a custom outfit. You can also make a living by teaching others to draw and develop their talent. Consider illustrating for fashion books and textbooks to bring a story to life. There are also a lot of fashion illustrators who sell their illustrations as works of art, because really, that is what they are, pieces of art. If any of these careers speak to you, you can definitely get there with hard work, dedication, persistence, and a lot of drawing. The basic purpose of a fashion illustration is communication. It is an expression of your inner self and how you look at fashion. Oh no, what if I can't draw, but I want to be a fashion designer? So what? Don't you worry. You do not need to be able to draw well to be a fashion designer. Drawing is a skill and not necessarily a talent, and skills can always be improved upon. With proper practice, anyone can learn how to draw, so not knowing how to draw should not stand in your way of pursuing your dreams. Experiment with different mediums and styles. Your technique will always be your own, but they will evolve when you expose yourself to new ideas. Happy drawing and have fun! Today's lesson challenge is to create your very own 9-head fashion figure. You need to cover your figure with a beautiful design, but I'm going to throw a creative constraint your way. You have to use a lightweight fabric with a polka dot print on it. You don't have to use it for your whole design. It can be one garment paired with something else, or it can be used as a section of color blocking, or only used as a small trim. The color of the print and size of the dots are up to you. Get inspired, grab a sketchbook or a piece of paper and pencil, and free your imagination to create some amazing outfits. Don't forget to show us your fashion illustrations. Please share your fashion illustration on your favorite social media channel, our Facebook group, and Instagram. Please remember to tag Shaw Academy and use the hashtag #ShawFashionFigure. I look forward to seeing all of your designs. Before you go off and design your new, fresh and trendy outfit, please complete your lesson assignment. This will really help you prepare for your module assignment at the end of Lesson 8. Also remember, all the summary notes and slides are available in your toolkit and would be really worthwhile to keep as a resource at your fingertips beyond this course. And it will also help you prepare for your assignments. Unfortunately, this is the end of lesson 4. I hope you had lots of fun learning how to draw your own fashion figures, and I hope you feel inspired and excited to play with different styles. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to having you all back in my classroom for lesson 5, Delve into Design. As always, stay fashionable.